Now, we won't tell people how many times we started this show because it was quite a few times. No, I'm kidding. We did do the rare thing where we started the show, but we weren't live. So I want to make sure we are live, verify we are live, so don't say anything disparaging. Actually, it was actually kind of sad because we were going through a lot of contracts. We were getting some flow, and then we realized literally we didn't hit the record button. So we are
And
live now, guys.
Well, they
And-
didn't have to know that, Logan.
we were on the screen too, Logan.
Yeah, that too.
Well,
No, hey, it's not the first time. It won't be the last, I'm sure.
the first time was very good though because we were amateurs then. It was a really bad open. I think it was,
that was the first time I had met Gov. It was very awkward, and then we had like 20 minutes of a conversation to ourselves, and then we were like, "Oh." And this one wasn't a much better opening, so I think every time it's happened to us, it's been for a good reason.
Yeah.
well, I think
In any case, we were just basically going over contracts this evening in addition to any other NFL news. Or Logan, I think you even had a good topic about when do you step away from DFS temporarily?
yeah, that's kind of an interesting topic because Gov literally had to step away to do some traveling, and so it just got me thinking of like when we're covering daily fantasy sports, and that becomes the main vehicle of your podcast, and it's like emotionally not only like when to bet, what to bet, how to bet. It's like how to be responsible with your bankroll. How to treat these people. These players like humans. Like all these elements that I enjoy. We also, as players, got to find a time to step away. And a traditional league like even like your dynasty league that's a bit more advanced, they have periods. They have, when you're in a league with a bunch of your mates, you're like, hey, on August 12th, we're going to do this rookie draft. Every Tuesday, we're going to do waivers during the season. So, like, everyone's used to a certain schedule, a certain circadian rhythm, if you will. With daily fantasy, there's like always special events. There's even special pools. There's special contests. There's free contests. Hey, this contest doesn't fill. Don't worry, we'll give you a chance to get in on it at the last second. So like, I understand why they do it from a money making perspective, but at some point, emotionally, you have to also know when to walk away. And sometimes it's just a hey, my family needs me. Hey, it's Memorial Day weekend. It's a holiday weekend. It's a good time to step away. And then other times, you got to schedule these things. So I just thought it was an interesting topic we can hit on at the end of the show. But until then, we had some more like off-season news and just kind of our thoughts on it. We did cover a lot of the UFL this season, so you were able to bring up Hakeem Butler. Donnie mentioned it to us on our show that actually wasn't live, that Butler did get signed by the Bengals, and we were just breaking that down now.
Unfortunately, we don't have his contract information right at this moment, but he's at least signed for at least, I believe it's just 1 year with the Bengals. And there's been talk about him possibly remaining at wide receiver, possibly filling in at tight end, which I'd be surprised if they did because they just drafted 2 tight ends and signed Mike Gesicki. So I think the Bengals are also just trying to figure out how to utilize their weapons this year.
Well, they have Chase is obviously the mainstay of that team.
Yep.
But they have a lot of like, even Chase is coming off an injury, so like there's a lot of time since we saw, or not Chase, Burrow's coming off an injury. Not only did he change his hair color and look unrecognizable, but he's like literally taking a long time off of football. So like, whenever there's that big changeover, there's going to be a lot of differences as well. They also got a rookie wide receiver, I believe, in Benson or Burton, I should say, not Benson.
There's a lot of question marks here with the Bengals.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Hakeem Butler, I think, is an interesting guy to fit in because if I'm not mistaken, he's very similar size to a guy like T. Higgins, which is the biggest question mark of the offense. Is he even going to be on the team? Yeah, they're almost exactly the same size. We don't even know if he's going to be on the team this upcoming season. So maybe Butler comes in and he looks like a fraction of what he looked like in the UFL, and he can at least alleviate that blow a bit. But I don't know if they're going to continue to drag this T. Higgins saga along if it's going to add continuous drama to them.
And on top of that, we don't even know if Jamar Chase is going to be holding out this season either. He's been showing up to practice, but just not dressed to do so.
Right. It's a weird play by Chase there. But, we don't know much about this Bengals team outside of the fact that there are guys who we like, and there's a lot of talent in the building. It's just, what is that talent going to go into?
And I think we're at the point in the offseason where this is what you should do. You should take a chance on a guy who flashed a physical profile, who has shown talent, who's in shape. That's the interesting, fun part about the UFL is these guys have played a version of professional football, already. They don't have to come out. Yeah. So I do think that's very valuable. Sure, it's not the NFL. It's a different brand of football, but they are in shape. How many hamstring injuries and those kind of soft tissue injuries do we see during the offseason? At least with a guy like Sayers who's over with the Giants, you're not going to see that as well. So I do like kind of a warm body. So even if that's the term you want to give these UFL guys for getting a chance, in a preseason kind of practice squad role, because that's what I'd imagine the contract is. I'd imagine it's comparable to a practice squad role. It's still valuable that he's literally coming off of just playing.
Well, and not only that, it's valuable to us in these upcoming weeks as preseason officially kicks off next week with the Hall of Fame game, which we talked a little bit about. This is a guy who is a legit red zone target in a preseason game, and we will be looking into DFS, maybe not on the show, but definitely in personals. Where this is a guy we know a lot about. He might be a guy that not many others will know about. It's a great possible play. And that's what I've been looking at lately. Possible guys who are going to be good for preseason games.
And that's what I mean by the vacation of DFS though, Donnie, a bit too, because it's we can always make the excuse of we can find an edge, or we have an edge because we covered the UFL, so we should play preseason, or or I want to root for this guy because I watched him play, spring football. So then you end up playing more preseason football than you intended. Or I'm not even saying you need a vacation. It's just the wheels are always spinning. People always talk about that in the NFL, how, there's never an offseason. It's just continual. And that's why I thought this would be an interesting kind of topic. We could hit on the news, but then say, do we need a break? When do we take it? What do we do? Because I love WNBA, so even NBA stopping, I'm you know what? I want to watch Caitlin Clark. I want to watch Angel Reese. That's kind of how and now the Olympics. So, Evan, being that you have probably the least amount of DFS experience, are you excited about preseason more or less? Is this the same for you? Because I've been so ingratiated in the DFS streets and the preseason streets, and always trying to carve out edges. It's hard for me to finally take some time off.
For me, DFS is more of a source of fun. It's not necessarily something that I chase after to put in serious money into as of right now. I say that despite putting $1 into a best ball lineup that I showed several episodes ago. But, preseason football, even if I did, I wouldn't bet much on it in the first place. I just want week 1 to get here so that I know who to actually play.
Don't get it twisted either. I'm promoting that we have good bankroll management and that you make emotionally smart decisions. But speaking of those emotions, that's how me and Donnie fell in love with Tank Dell was last year in preseason. Donnie, Puka as well. I'm Donnie, you gotta check out this guy. Tank Dell. I think he played your Patriots that week. I'm you gotta check him out. He catches a one-handed catch in the second half of that game, and forever. Then it's almost like you imprint on a player. You take a real investment in their career. Speaking of investments, the Dolphins made an investment in Tua today, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's a fair contract. The thing that I like about this deal is we've seen a lot of quarterbacks getting these 5, sometimes 6, maybe more, very long duration deal. They are signing up to pay Tua as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, which he deserves. This contract will be at the bottom end of the 10 in the next couple seasons for sure. They're not signing up to this long term if we're going to suck for the next 5 years, 6 years if Tua is not the guy. We will know by 30 what his prime is. That's what this contract will be. He'll be up by 30. We'll know what his prime is going to look like. Is he going to be worth doubling down on this investment again later?
I mean, yeah, he's looked better and better with every season he's played. He's not looking any worse, even with bumps in the road like concussion issues and just learning how to take falls better. Tua's got the weapons that he needs. He's got a good offensive system, and he finished as the QB9 last year in fantasy football. 29-14. I don't know if I'd call that touchdown to interception ratio amazing, but he taking 29 sacks isn't the worst thing in the world in a season, but Tua, I would say, is a guy that you can absolutely trust with your future.
And I actually trust this more now because I mentioned it last week before we even knew the contract details. I'm sure he was working on the deals behind the scenes, but I mentioned how Tua was in better shape than he's ever been. He lost like 26 pounds. And then not only did he lose the weight, it wasn't like he went on some kind of fat keto diet or some kind of thing just to say, oh, I can do it, or I can fit into some swim trunks or what have you. He did it with a purpose. He said, I want to get in better shape so I have more mobility, so I can help my offensive line. He cited those reasons. It wasn't just like, oh, I want to get in better shape. And then the contract comes, which I thought was interesting because what's the narrative you sometimes hear when people get paid? Oh, they don't care as much, or they got paid so, their on-field might be different. I think these two things are married. We're seeing Tua reinvest himself, body and mind. We're saying, hey, you're financially taken care of now. And, oh, by the way, you're still in probably better shape than you've ever been in your whole life. That's got to be a good sign if you're a Dolphin.
Yeah. I mean, I was always on the Tua train. I was on the tank for Tua train. The fact that he slid to 5 just because he got that terrible injury in college always shocked me. I've always seen the talent. He's actually been much worse than I thought he would be. But he's still one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Whether you want to call him, just a check down guy, that's fine. Brady was a check down guy his whole career too. Whatever is efficient to get your offense working and helps you win games, that's all that matters to me.
And why is checking down? Oh, sorry. Finish your thought, Donnie.
Well, I'm just saying you could be Favre and you could win with that, or you could be, Tua and Brady, whatever. I know Tua doesn't have the Super Bowl, but that's an extreme case. Not many of them will win Super Bowls.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with how you win as long as you're doing it, your way and it works.
I don't even have a problem with guys like Tua dumping off the ball with check down passes or just shovel passes or whatever the case, because that helps your completion percentage. And as long as you get positive yardage, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it because it still takes a lot of skill to do it. But a lot of quarterbacks don't necessarily make the brightest decisions of when to check the ball down. And
Jameis.
Tua does it well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because there is a skill to the check down. Like, even if something is very simple, there's still a art and a precision to doing something very simply, but doing it very well. There's still an art to that. There's an appreciation to that. And I'm not saying you should see it because some people don't. Some people watch football like cavemen. They want their chicken wings. They want to see their big hits. They want to pretend like the NFL was in the 90s. That's fine. There's those people. There's the people that only gamble. There's the people that don't care, about emotional bankroll the way we do. That's the whole point of this show, is to present a version of sports that I enjoy. And being disabled, I will just tell you that the way I see sports is a lot different than most people, because not only was I not a professional athlete, I was never given the chance to have that kind of development like everyone else gets, through school. And so I had to see the game through a different lens. So I'm okay acknowledging and seeing a skill set differently than most people. I mean, some people will always ding Charles Barkley, for example, because he hasn't won a championship. And that's true. You can say, hey, I wish Tua would have won. Or because Tua had these injuries, he didn't reach his full potential. That's also true. But then you can say, you know what? When he does play, I do enjoy it. And I just think a lot of times Twitter does this, social media in general, where we have to be so defiantly love it or hate it. And I feel like a lot of people are doing that with contracts, this Tua contract, and we're going to talk about a few others, where it's like you have to have this instantaneous love or hate kind of debate television mindset, and I just think that's a bad mindset to fall in.
I mean, I just thought it was fair for both sides. The reason why I like Tua so much is, obviously I grew up watching Brady Patriots. It was a lot of checkdowns. That third down to constant dink and dunks, that's so demoralizing for a defense. It gets exhausting.
Yep.
I mean, that's why I prefer that style. But, I mean, Logan, I know you prefer that, jump ball receiver, a quarterback that's going to gun it down the field, take the risk. I see both sides of the argument for sure.
Well, what's cool about that, Donnie, we can have our preference in the style and the profile of players we prefer in general, but we still have those outliers where, like, you know what, I might not, I don't have to ever think Tom Brady, for example, has the strongest arm in the league, but I can appreciate his finer details and his extreme skill and longevity. So there are still elements of his game that are extremely, like, proficient, and I can appreciate those efficiencies.
I think the only quarterback that comes to mind when it's like merging that would be Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
I mean, I can't think of anyone else besides that in all of NFL history.
But that's a good point, though, Donnie. Is there is still that gunslinger that you enjoy. It might be Patrick Mahomes, but I feel like a lot of people, again, to go back to that debate, television, debate, it's like people all think that you have to be so defiantly one way or the other. That's not how you're supposed to think. That's not how we build DFS lineups. It kind of transitions very well when we do that in our strategy show. Evan, you were going to say?
I mean, I was only going to point out that Tua had quite a lot of bumps in the road in his rookie contract with the first several seasons with all the injuries, and I don't believe he even started right away. I think Fitzpatrick was in front of him in 2020.
Started, and
so he was there.
It was really wobbly that year when Tua took over. It looked bad. Everyone was calling Tua a bust the first year, which was ridiculous because that team was terrible.
No Tyreek, no Jalen Waddle.
We forget how quick this Dolphins team's turned themselves around, especially Tua, and it all starts with Tua.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about, turning stuff around. Let's move over to.
Well, I was gonna say too. They had Devontae Parker, who turned out to be not much at all, and then Tua had the injuries that kept him back, including multiple concussions, and I think he had 2 in roughly 8 days or something like that. That could have killed him. And last season was his first full season ever. And he looked amazing with the targets that he had. So, if anybody's got a problem with Tua's contract, well, suck it.
And if you have a problem with Tua's contract, you definitely have a problem with Jordan Love's contract.
Yep.
Because whether you like the guy or not, they were forced to pay him. I mean, he played too well to not pay him something. The highest paid quarterback in NFL history is definitely a contract for a guy who's only ever played one season, and anytime he played before that, he looked awful.
He had a really rough first half of last season, and it wasn't until after their bye week when he really started to look much better as a starting quarterback. And even now, I'm still convinced that 2024 is his prove-it season, even with this contract extension. But even now, they already signed him to $55 million a year. You're stuck with him if he's not as good as he was in the second half of last year.
I don't know why you don't play him off the tag and force him to just play off a tag one more year.
I think this is just because of Guntakast, as I'll mispronounce his name on purpose. He went out of his way to push Rodgers out of Green Bay, and he traded up to get Jordan Love with the 26th overall pick in 2020. I think if it didn't work out, he was looking to save his own ass. And if he gets fired anyway, well, Packers are stuck with this contract.
I think it's interesting, too, with the Packers, and this is the point that Logan and I argue about a lot. Me and Logan have a completely different idea on when you should start your rookie quarterbacks and what situations you should. Logan's always saying just put him in. Point is, 3 years was too long. Because now you put yourself in that pickle of, well, they didn't take up his 4th-year option because they weren't confident in him, or 5th-year option because they weren't confident in him, which they should have done. If you planned on him coming in year 4 being the starter, then you should just double down and say year 5 at 27 he'll be the starter, and then we'll figure out what we want to do. 1 year is not enough to figure out if the guy's a franchise guy. And Jordan Love, before that, we didn't even think he could be a starter for most of the media, whether you believe that or not. He looked bad very early on in his career. And he had that one game against the Chiefs where they put up 10 points, and it was terrible.
Yeah,
and now
a lot of people forgot.
Yeah, he made people forget, and maybe that this is who he is. This, the guy we saw at the end of last year, that might be him. He loses his best weapon in Aaron Jones. Whether you want Josh Jacobs to come in and be that, it's different. They're different players.
The Green Bay Packers, even with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, suffered greatly in their offense when Aaron Jones was not on the field. People don't seem to recognize how important he was for that offense. Now he's a Minnesota Viking. Josh Jacobs doesn't play like Aaron Jones completely. There are some similarities, but if Josh Jacobs can't fill that role, I think this offense is a bit in trouble.
Aaron Jones, when he came back from his injury and was the guy, he was the best running back in the NFL. There is no debating it. He led the league in yards. You could say McCaffrey, but still, the production value that Aaron Jones gave, it was that level.
Yeah, they were using him exactly like McCaffrey.
And he played probably better than McCaffrey did, just because he was the only guy who could do that.
And also because McCaffrey's on the Panthers, where they it's the Panthers. Sorry, Gov, not sorry.
He was just so dominant. I don't think Josh Jacobs, I don't think any running back really in the league could come in and do what Aaron Jones did. It's just a weird contract to double down on this late. You waited too long to start him. You should have put Aaron out of the building if you wanted to put him out of the building.
I agree with you on this, Donnie. I think they should have moved this better than they did. I don't think a lot of people want to admit that the Packers fucked up with this, because they're still finishing above 500. So they're like, well, they're still a good team and all that. But this is looking to me like the way the Raiders handled Josh Jacobs. And now we're seeing the Falcons probably pulling something similar with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, but that remains to be seen. And I agree with you in general, Donnie. I think Jordan Love started a bit too late. I don't know what Gutekunst was thinking about that, but yeah, Jordan Love only played 10 games in his first 3 seasons. That's just not enough.
Well, one of the things I really enjoy to do is have a healthy debate. A lot of times people assume that I'm arguing for the sake that I want to be right and wrong. Really what I want to do is present a alternative and then see how much of that alternative I disagree with or agree with. Because Donnie is right. We disagree on the timetable of when you should start rookies and when you shouldn't. But I think we actually come to the same kind of emotional impasse of what I'm trying to do by starting them right away is find out if they can play. And the reason Donnie sometimes wants to wait is because he's trying to make sure not only do we find out if they can play, but they play in the right conditions. But then there's what you guys said, where it's at some point you basically expand and spoil both of those outcomes, because if you wait too long, you don't get that young, vibrant kind of all for naught, Three Musketeers kind of mentality where everyone can kind of grow together and get chemistry, because the aging veterans along with your rookie quarterback don't really fit. But then if you wait too long, he doesn't really have a running mate. And I think what you guys said is right here, because even you guys mentioned Jones, but I'll mention Watson, who they drafted in the first round, who's been hurt more than he's not. They wanted him to be, the guy, the wide receiver. It ended up being Reed, because Reed got more chances because of Watson being hurt. Just imagine if that development could have actually happened on the timetable they wanted. And so now it's like, well, we already behind the 8 ball with this development because of Watson's injury. If we lose Love, he's got to develop with another quarterback. So I just feel like the whole timetable, whether it be one decision, one reason, one thought, the whole timetable is thrown off by all these different injuries. I mean, even Jones probably would have been more consistent had he not been injured. So, injuries, I feel like, have marred the Packers one way or the other, and it's led them to this situation.
Well,
I don't think it's simply just that, though, Logan. Not to nitpick too hard, but Christian Watson was a second-round pick, and he's had hamstring issues where he's had to work with a specialist to try and strengthen that to prevent further injuries. But um, I don't think there's a universal solution anyway with whether your rookie quarterback in the first round should start right away or sit right away, because every team's different. The needs are different. The mission is different, where whether they're just rebuilding or they want to win now. Because if you're taking a quarterback number one overall, he's absolutely fucking starting, like Joe Burrow and soon to be Caleb Williams. And yeah, and every situation is going to be different, even if you have a team where they might not have the greatest offensive line. Is Drake May going to be the guy to start week one, for example? Or is it going to be Jacoby Brissett?
I think that's a very valid point. But you mentioned it. Even the player, like down to the player, down to the team, down to the philosophy, they're all different. Each individual is different, and that's why having these debates is sometimes pointless because we're not in the building. We don't know their personalities. We don't know how they're interacting or even their own timetable. So we do see a lot of late bloomers, maybe physically or emotionally, for a multitude of reasons that we probably just don't understand.
yeah, and like this Packers team, the thing is, we know this is to be true. The quarterbacks that are winning Super Bowls are quarterbacks on rookie deals or not getting paid this kind of money, the top kind of money. It's you wasted your Super Bowl window. Statistically speaking, now I'm not saying the Packers will never win a Super Bowl with Love being the highest paid quarterback in the league, but statistically speaking, you severely hurt your chances. And you don't even know if Love is a true franchise guy.
Yeah, he may have finished a great second half of that season, which puts him at like the quarterback 5 in fantasy football, but that remains to be seen if he can keep that up. We've seen talent before come up in the last like 6 weeks of the season, only for it to fizzle out and do nothing. Dante Pettis at wide receiver, for example, he was a 49er. He had a great second half of his season. He didn't pan out to be the future for anybody.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll give you two more examples at the quarterback position. Nick Foles. He looked rough when he first started playing. I mean, he's had a couple stints where he just looks amazing, gets his contract, and he doesn't turn out. I mean, hell, if we imagine back in the, 2015, 16 year, if Case Keenum got paid big money by the Vikings? We knew Case Keenum was kind of a Cinderella story. Maybe these are extreme examples, but that Jordan Love has that potential. If this was just a 1 year thing, I don't want to pay a guy top money when it could just be a 1 year thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you because the Packers have a lot of fucking problems on their defense that can hamper their Super Bowl chances because I don't see it if they can't stop the run and if they have guys like Jair Alexander who, I mean, he's a good cornerback, I will say that, but he's got a whole highlight reel of him getting burned by guys like Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, and more. So that there are a lot of holes that the Packers need to fill, and I just don't see how this makes sense.
And when you should have just gave him his 5th year option and just bit what would have been $25 million for that 5th year. And if he doesn't pan out, you just eat the $25 million.
Exactly.
I've always been of the mindset that your behaviors are a language. So the thing is you can have a philosophy and you can have a structure, but then when you bring in players and they have different skill sets, you should evolve and you should highlight those skill sets. Some players are ready to play right away. Some players are not. We could have statistics on both sides of the aisle for this argument, but the whole point is knowing what you want to do and why you want to do it. Not always is it right or is it wrong. It's sometimes you have to play the cards that you were dealt, to use that analogy, and sometimes you're going to have a card that you want to hold on to and you want to grow and you want to develop it and cultivate it. And other times it's like, oh no, this is move-in ready. You know, this is already a furnished product. I already know this. And being able to meld and identify those qualities are what make good general managers and good head coaches, I would say.
Well, I will say this as well, because me and Logan have debated the Drake May should he start, should he sit situation for a while. Mm-hmm. We're only 3 days in training camp. Drake May has popped to me, and the offense just looks more electric when he's playing with them. I can't imagine he's not the starter day one at this point, just because it looks that much better when he's there.
And he's getting paid starter money.
Exactly. And that's why I would say, well, Donnie, you could still be right about wanting to, as a whole, you could be right about wanting to develop your quarterback slowly. Like that could just be a philosophy that you have ingratiated in how you would like football to be handled. So if you coached a team, if you ran an organization, that would be your preference. That doesn't mean that you don't have eyes and there isn't outliers or exceptions to your rule. And I think that's intelligence when you can recognize those exceptions and be like, okay, I still believe this. I still have plenty of good reasons to believe that, but this is the exception.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm saying 3 days into camp, I'm seeing more pops out of him than I'm seeing out of the guy who's supposed to be the sit-in quarterback for a little bit. I think you just pull the trigger, and we're only 3 days in. That tells me that this could be something special.
I also just realized that his contract, his rookie contract, is fully guaranteed. Now I think that fucking tells us that he's gonna start. Whether he's ready, I think he will be ready, but I don't see why you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I know you don't. You guys haven't paid too much attention, and I don't like to pay too much attention to training camp, but you can tell with certain guys.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that. Jacoby Brissett I've seen him miss hitch routes and underthrow guys on hitches, whereas I'm seeing May hit guys in stride 20 yards down the field. That's something the Patriots offense hasn't had in I don't know how long. So
that I haven't seen a lot of the training camp footage for the Patriots either, but I have not read anything horrible about Drake May, and I would be very surprised if he had to sit behind Brissett. I'd love to know reasoning behind that if the Patriots choose that.
It would just be conservative defensive head coach. That's the reasoning.
Yeah, and I mean, they did groom Jerron Mayo from the Belichick camp to do stuff like that, but we'll see if he does.
He's his own guy. He's going to do what he thinks best.
And that's where, like, if he chooses to be conservative, he could still have the talent perspective to be wrong. And if that's the way he wants to run his organization, you got to let him do it because you hired him to do a job. So you hired him to make the decision. You can't then crown it as a bad or good decision, instantaneously. I think that would be unfair as well.
What's funny about that point you just made, Logan, is that Gerard Mayo and I forgot the GM's name wanted to trade up to get JJ McCarthy, and Robert Kraft said, "No, we're taking Drake May." So,
I don't know if that's true.
That's what was reported.
I don't know.
What do you think?
I heard that Bill Belichick liked JJ McCarthy, and the other people in the building were iffy on it. Or it might have been Jaden Daniels. Either way, both of them I didn't like, so I'm kind of mixing them up. Completely different play styles. But I didn't hear definitively Drake May was unliked by Gerard Mayo, or JJ was liked more.
Personally, I think that's on purpose. I think we're at such an era in technology boom where you're going to get a bunch of different leaks in your organization on purpose, where you're going to get these kind of splits, again, on purpose to feed to the media. And so then no matter what happens, you have an easy out. Only the people in the organization truly know what they really thought. So I'm not saying the reports are wrong. I'm saying that they probably heard a lot of echoes in that building, and that was intentional smoke screening, I would say.
I always took it as more of they really like JJ. They really like Drake May, and they knew the Giants loved Drake May, and if they got an offer that absolutely blowed them away, they would have traded back and just taken a guy like JJ or Marvin Harrison Jr. That's how I always took it, but I could be wrong.
Based on some of what we're seeing, do you think we're going to be able to still get Drake May late? Because he's one of those guys I feel like in best ball drafts specifically, everyone's loving like our DFS coverage. A lot of people think DFS is one of the more casual platforms for best ball, but I think just overall, I think we were talking about it this morning, just the overall NFL ecosystem has gotten smarter when it comes to fantasy, whether it be dynasty, best ball, daily. I just think all this news can be overreacted to, but people are just getting smarter about how they break down contracts. That might even be what we have on the screen here. Would just be people being able to pull up the actual money and like realize, oh, there's a different level of investment here, literally and physically, when it comes to fantasy. I think if you want like a Drake May or a Bo Nix, for example, you're gonna have to draft them now.
There's a lot of things that you could do in that situation. I don't think you have to draft them now, but it's hard when you're in the Patrick Mahomes era. It's going to be hard to win, especially in the AFC.
Yeah, the Chiefs just have the team to beat until proven otherwise. When you win 2 Super Bowls in a row and you have a good chance of winning a third in a row, yeah, there's a lot of work these clubs have to do to try and keep up. And looking at the way quarterbacks are being paid now, according to Adam Schefter, the highest quarterbacks in the NFL on a per year basis right now, Love, Lawrence, and Burrow are all tied at about $55 million and change. Tua is now 53.1. Goff is at 53. Justin Herbert is at 52.5. Lamar Jackson is at 52, and Jalen Hurts is at 51. We're in a new era.
Yes.
Yeah.
And no matter how you feel about it, that's how it is. You can notice one guy who has a name not being said. Mahomes isn't up there, and there's a reason why he's winning. And I'm not going to bash anyone for taking their money. They deserve it. They earn that money. But you do sacrifice a lot by saying, I'm going to be that kind of guy, money-wise.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to align it with what you expect from the team, your comfortability with the team. There's more than fitting into a team and fitting into a culture than just the money. It would be like using a tournament style or a GPP style lineup and putting it into a cash game and expecting me to have similar results. You're going to build that lineup based on the pay structure and the structure of that contest. You should play to your contest, and you should play with the people that you want for the reasons you want. And I mean, I still hear people talk about like LeBron James and Chris Bosh and Wade getting all together and how that was like unfair for the NBA or different things like that. But when it's available to them and they can make sacrifices and they can make decisions off of it, it's just things that can happen. It depends on the other stuff that happens along with it that matters.
I don't know if you heard the story. Melo also, allegedly, he says he was offered a contract with that team to go play with all three, and it would have been a big four. But he wasn't willing to take that role. I don't think he should have either, because to say, "Oh, I'm going to be the at best third option on a team," when I have potential to be a Hall of Famer, is tough. That's
That was a very. I'm glad you said that because you kind of saved me there, Donnie. Because it was a better way to articulate my point. It's there are times where you can think about things outside of winning or outside of money. You can say, "Hey, this is not good for my Hall of Fame legacy." I want to play in the New York market, so I'm going to take the max with the New York Knicks over going to play with LeBron James, even though he's my friend, even though we're going to have a great life. My life is still going to be great. I'm choosing to do this for this reason, and sometimes we just got to respect that reason.
NFL contracts are also different from NBA contracts in the first place, but if we put those differences aside too, Mahomes signed that 10-year deal with the Chiefs to put him at averaging $45 million a year, and even though he's now making $10 million less than the top quarterbacks at this point, that's not terribly a big drop-off for a guy like Mahomes, even if he is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL skill-wise, where he could go back and say, hey, I'm clearly better than these guys. I deserve more money. But 2 Super Bowls in a row and $45 million. How many NFL players are making $45 million a year? I mean, let's put it that way. He's not going to go hungry.
and also, it's easier to stomach when you're playing with your best friends and you love your head coach and they have to make their money too. Would you rather lose that?
Because he's making the Super Bowl bonuses anyway.
Right. And, I mean, gosh, the endorsements just having Kelsey and him next to each other gets.
Mm-hmm. All those State Farm commercials.
I mean, there is some marketability to deciding how and where you want to get your money, though. If you know you have a commercialized opportunity, you can make those financial decisions it's not to say they're right or wrong. They're just different. Some people are going to have those financial opportunities to sell, especially if you are a position like a quarterback over like a position like an offensive lineman. And that's where things are not fair, but sometimes we have to admit there is even unfairness in sports.
Hold on, Logan. Explain that again with those nuggies.
No thanks.
There is a good example though of like a quarterback that probably, that has made significantly more money compared to a guy who was more making money through his career. Drew Brees was a guy who always, made a lot of money through his playing and not much through endorsements, and his team wasn't always great.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare it to a guy like Brady who took his pay cuts, he made all that money back in commercials, and now even with a much more lucrative deal with Fox. It all kind of comes back to you eventually if you are winning. And that's a big if. You cannot guarantee that.
Well, it's funny that you brought up that comparison because I actually have a good corollary off of that. I remember everyone saying, like, oh, don't worry about Drew Brees after his career. He's going to go sign with NBC Sports. He's going to be fantastic as a broadcaster. He's got all this personality. I think he was friends with Mike Tirico, so he already had it end with NBC Sports. He goes there. He does that job. He was worse than I thought. I was a Drew Brees guy. I wanted to be a fan of him. I wanted to be a stan, and he was not good for whatever reason. Marketability, how NBC used him, it just didn't translate on the screen. Funny enough, fast forward a couple of years, and now Tom Brady has a chance to be one of the best broadcasters, which we would have never predicted because he was kind of so stubbly and he was unrelatable, and now he's doing like Netflix roasts and comedy shows and really showing his range. And that's just sometimes where you can't box people in.
Yeah, and it kills me because, man, just 5 years ago, these quarterback contracts were so different.
Yeah, Drew Brees
$30 million used to be a big deal.
Yep.
10 years ago, $30 million was a major deal.
And it still is. It's just everything is, like we talked about it, everything is an evolution. Things are going to change. And how you use that money, how you use your viability is important. It's not just dollars and cents. It's what that means now. Like social media is a lot more influential than even a commercial is. So there's a lot of ways to make money. It does matter how you do it, though. It really does. Speaking of how we do it, we wanted to give you guys kind of a quicker show, a real glimpse, do something a bit different. Is there any other topics you guys want to hit? I thought we covered everything pretty quickly and pretty concisely. I should say, when Gov gets back, we are going to do a deeper dive for DFS, for lineup builds for week one. It is kind of silly to do a week one DFS dive, but that's kind of the fun of it. So, like, I want to dedicate a whole show to that. I want to have some fun. I want to really just dive into the absurdity of it because everything we talk about week one, and I think we're going to try to do that on Tuesday, is probably not going to make any sense by the time they actually play. But that's kind of the fun of it. Any other topics tonight, though?
No. I mean, this will be the last, possibly the last show that we have to do without reviewing a potential lineup of some sort with the Hall of Fame game coming. So enjoy that coming up. Maybe we'll get a little Hall of Fame stuff going. Maybe I'll have to do it on my personal if Logan doesn't want to do it.
No, I can definitely work because there's always an edge, and that's the thing. Evan mentioned it before. As long as you're having fun and as long as you're managing, even if you take a couple of days off, just take some refreshers, just see what you're doing. I love the review shows. Like honestly, Mondays are just as exciting as Sundays are because I get all the reviews from Sunday. All these touts telling me to play this guy over this guy. They have to finally show me the results on a Monday morning, and we get to see who was right and wrong. And then the nightcap is some more Monday Night Football. So personally, actually, that's my favorite gambling day is actually Monday, not Sunday.
Can I spoil the salaries for the Hall of Fame game?
I don't even know how to find those. To be honest,
for the DraftKings Classic lineup, everybody is $5,500.
What?
I was gonna say I already knew that. They keep everyone's price the same.
Yep. So
They
we
don't
can
know.
we can go nuts.
Yeah, they don't know how to price it, so they basically just price everyone the same, and they let your information be the edge.
Can't wait to play Sam Howell.
Oh yeah.
That's probably the best move, but we won't dive into that too much.
With that
Yep.
being said, though, good night. If Gov's listening, travel safe, man. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We'll be ready to do some week 1 deep dives. Good night,
Have a good
guys.
night, everybody.
Not everyone.